So this headline caught my attention today, which was Alex Jones must pay 4.1 million to Sandy Hook's parents, jury finds. So Alex Jones lost a case in which he was getting, I believe, sued for defamation, and it was by these two parents whose 6-year-old son died during Sandy Hook. Their names was Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis. I think they're both husband and wife. So they lost their 6-year-old son during the unfortunate Sandy Hook tragedy that took place in 2012. The the main thing that was behind this was Alex Jones lied that the Sandy Hook shooting never happened. He just said straight up this was a hoax, this was staged, and it wasn't real. So you would think at first that this is just a at first this is just a harmless, idiotic lie, just a very stupid lie out there, and that it wouldn't really threaten the livelihoods of the victims' families, but that wasn't the case. Granted, this is nasty for someone to say something hideous like this. What Alex said, just it is definitely straight up nasty, but you don't think it's going to go beyond just hurtful things said on social media. But from what I read, is that this family got harassed. Heslin and Lewis were both harassed for years by his followers. They stalked them. They would send death threats to them. It was pretty horrid. And keep in mind, Alex Jones has a bunch of followers. He has millions of followers. So they took his word like it was a gospel, and they terrorized these people. I'm just going to read some excerpts from this article that just made me really, really, really not like Alex Jones, or well, what I would say, just add more fuel to a fire why I don't respect this man. But here we go. So here's his excerpt. It says both Heslin and Lewis said they have received death threats from people inspired by Jones since the massacre. Heslin said his home was shot at by someone who shouted Jones's name. Their lawyers said Monday that the parents have gone into isolation with a round-the-clock security detail after an unspecified number of encounters while they have been in Texas for the trial. A psychiatrist hired by the plaintiffs testified that both parents suffer from a complex form of post-traumatic stress disorder. They each sleep with weapons by their bed and don't turn on their air conditioning out of fear. They won't hear something dangerous nearby, the psychiatrist testified. I wake up at night with panic attacks, Heslin said. I was in the hospital a few weeks ago with heart pain. So this man put them through a lot of misery. Just they never felt safe. They always felt threatened. They had to deal with just threats against them just throughout this whole ordeal since Sandy Brook happened. That they didn't feel that they were safe. That's what I gathered from reading this article. To me, that is horrible, horrible to go through it. So it wasn't just Alex Jones making up some lies that were hurtful. He was actually threatening these people's security because of his followers. They were dumb enough to believe his BS, and they terrorized these people for years. Can you imagine that you lose your own son to a horrible shooting like this, just a terrible event? And then not only do you have to deal with the pain of losing your son, you have to deal with this idiot sending his minions after you to terrorize you for from the moment you lost your son. You had to deal with this, and they've probably been dealing with this since the present. So you're dealing with this for like about 10 years. So 10 years of pain, anguish, and suffering, and you just never really got to mourn the loss of your son properly. I know they said that in the article that they never really got to grieve in the proper way the loss of their son, and this man just just added more fuel to the fire. Just it disgusts me what he did. I really have no empathy for Alex Jones. To me, he's a sick individual. If you even go back to when he first started, this guy's career started way back in 1996 when he was 22 years old, and he's always been into these conspiracy theories that he would just make up out of nowhere, out of thin air, just making up a bunch of BS lies about things. Just I think I'm trying to read right here on Wikipedia page, just any of his dumb conspiracies that he's come up with. I'm just looking right here. There was something about the New World Order. I think he said back in 1996. allegedly. So just this guy has always said just crazy ass shit coming out of his mouth. Just according to Wikipedia, he really became big after 9/11 because he was one of those 9/11 truthers who believed that the government orchestrated the 9/11 attacks. Well, according to it, it said that he believes it's a 98% chance. So I guess he was covering his tracks with that conspiracy theory. But just a guy who's like a nut job. Just I find it interesting that here's an interesting excerpt I'm going to read from Wikipedia about this guy. It says here about the Waco siege and Oklahoma bombing. Towards the end of Jones' senior year of high school at the Branch Davidian complex near Waco, Texas, around 100 miles from Austin, the Waco siege ended in April 1993 with a substantial fire and a significant number of fatalities. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, these events only confirmed his belief in the inexorable progress of unseen malevolent forces. It was this time he started to host a call-in show on public access television in Austin. So they said he was inspired by the Waco, Texas siege. I remember that back in the day. So, and also says the Oklahoma City bombing on April 19, 1995 was intended by perpetrator Timothy McVeigh as a response to the federal involvement in the botched resolution of the Waco siege on its second anniversary. So it says Jones began accusing the federal government of having caused it. I understand there is a kleptocracy working with psychopathic governments, clutches of evil, and know the tricks of control. So that's what Jones said back then. Just so he believed that the federal government caused the Oklahoma City bombing, which is such an asinine thing to say. But so that shows you, even way back then, as a very young man, he was selling this conspiracy garbage. Just it never ceases to amaze me. This guy could come up with just random conspiracy shit right out of thin air. Just I have zero respect for him. Just it's zero. It just pisses me off that there's so many people that buy into his garbage, and just he's spreading just a lot of chaos by not telling the truth and making up these lies. He's also profited off these lies. It's like what I said before. He became big after the 9/11 attacks. I think right here in Wikipedia it says that that was his rise. Just that's how he was able to just become like a superstar when it came to creating a cult following that made him very rich. So I think it's terrible, like all the destruction he's done over the years and brainwashing people to believe in his garbage, just his half baked bullshit, as I would say. Just this guy just makes up just a lot of garbage, but it's amazing how rich he's gotten off of brainwashing people. I was also reading some other articles that this guy is going to have two more trials for defamation in which he could lose money, but he filed for bankruptcy ahead of time. To delay the next two trials, which is downright sickening. But I understand it from a strategic standpoint what he's trying to do to get out of paying money. I've also read that this guy took millions of dollars out of InfoWars many years ago, and he paid taxes. I can't get the precise figure right now, but I think it was around 60 some million dollars. He paid around 30 some million dollars. So you do the math. He has like 30 million some dollars floating around or more, and I think he took out the money 10 years ago. I can't confirm it precisely, but if you do research, you'll see it. There have been so many articles about that today. So this man is still rich despite losing this trial because he was able to take out his money out of his companies to protect himself while also strategically filing bankruptcy. So I think unfortunately he'll live another day, at least for his career, to spread more propaganda, to spread more nonsense and corrupt more people's minds, and just basically he's in my eyes a 21st century terrorist, just a 21st century propaganda terrorist. That's what I'm going to call him. So this is not the end of his career. I don't think it is. I think it just makes him even bigger for his fans and his diehard fans. So they'll continue to support his garbage. But hopefully he ends up losing more money. I think that's the only thing we can hope for him. And hopefully he can actually actually deal with real bankruptcy, not just what I call fake bankruptcy, which is what he did in protecting his money and his assets. But we'll see.